Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Coffee with Craig, where we talk about all things firearms, firearms policy, politics, culture, media, you name it. We're talking about it right here on Coffee with Craig. So please take a moment, like and share the program so that your friends can join in the conversation as it's happening. Also, please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook. And if you're following us on Facebook, make sure you hit the notification button so that you know exactly when these programs are going live. Also, please take a moment to visit us on visit fpcgear.com. That's fpcgear.com. Cool place to find T-shirts, hoodies, coffee mugs. Folks, this is how we pay the bills. So help us, because you know that when you buy any of these items, you know that the money goes right back into the fight for our right to keep and bear arms. So you can support the Second Amendment. You can look good doing it. That's fpcgear.com. All right, now, we all know that there is a war on guns. And we all know that there are many, many in various different areas, whether it's in education, whether it's in politics, and whether it's the liberal media or entertainment. We all know that there's a lot of folks out there who are engaging in a war on guns or a war on the Second Amendment. Unfortunately, that also happens to include, doctors. In fact, there are many doctors out there who believe that, they have a responsibility to get engaged in fighting and working to take away our right to keep and bear arms. Now, they don't ever want to admit it. They say, well, we're just out here trying to do the right thing. But in the end, most of the stuff that they keep pushing is all about how to take away our firearms. It's called the This Is Our Lane movement, and it was kind of done, and that kind of hashtag came in response to when they first came out. And just to take a step back, so recently, or 2015 actually, there was an article, a call to action in the Annals of Medicine, and they wanted to basically say, look, we as doctors need to stand up and fight against. We need to fight for what they call, once again, common sense gun laws, right? And, groups basically came out and told them that, look, here's a problem. You don't know what you're talking about. I mean, you wouldn't want me going to you and giving you medical advice, right? Sure enough, if you ask them that, they say, well, no, why would I want you, someone who knows nothing about medicine, to give me medical advice? Exactly. But for some reason, and I think they'll explain a little bit of it here, they seem to think that, this is kind of where they're supposed to be. So let's check it out.
As an ER doctor, I am the first and sometimes the only physician to touch a patient who's been shot, right? And that's for those who are lucky enough to make it to my doors. Paramedics out in the field see far more than I do. As someone who's caring for a victim of a gunshot wound, my priority is saving their life in that moment. When I can't save their life, it's then my job to go and talk to the family and to help counsel them not just on the immediate after effects of that injury, but on all of the psychological trauma that it causes among them and their families. For those who survive, they're, of course, often left with lasting psychological and physical trauma. But here's the thing. As doctors, we don't just take care of patients in the moment. We also put our brains and our hearts and our willpower to fixing problems like this, to preventing them before they start. We would never look at, again, taking Zika or Ebola epidemics and say, well, it's happening, we're just going to accept it. We do research and we find ways to stop epidemics, to stop the influx of patients through our doors. And that's what we're looking for here.
Periodically, we in the news will cover crime statistics. So the numbers will come out. Oh, this crime is down, this crime is up. And, often homicide is down and there's a celebration over that. And I always like to sort of remind people that, often homicides are down because the doctors are incredibly good at what they're doing, that people who may have died 10 years ago are not dying because we have incredible doctors. But the crisis is still there. Do you consider this gun violence a health crisis?
Absolutely. This is undoubtedly a public health epidemic. We have over 100 people who are killed and over 200 who are injured every day across the United States. That's almost as many as the number of people who are dying from opioid overdoses, right? So it's incredibly important for us to deal with this as the epidemic that it is.
Okay, so let's deal with this from two perspectives. Number one, these are people who really don't really know nor understand their jobs, all right? In one case, you have the media, that is, the reporters who are not reporting the news, they're advocating. Because first of all, in this story, there is nobody from both sides. There's one side of the debate. There's one side of the discussion. And it's represented by both the interviewer and the interviewee. All right. So first of all, when it is evident that you do not know what you're talking about, and then you decide you want to advocate instead of doing your job, there's problem number one. Number two, as the doctor decided to say, well, hey, our job is, this is an epidemic and we're epidemiologists. And you know what? Human behavior or people's behavior, first of all, that's not an epidemic. First of all, you're not talking about how you deal with gun violence. You're talking specifically about how you deal with violence. Now, you happen to point to gun violence because that's something that you have dealt with the victims of gun violence, which basically tells me, yeah, you're biased. You are wholly biased, and it's largely about restricting the rights of gun owners, restricting guns, their access to the firearms and the ammunition that, oh, by the way, the Constitution gives them a legal right to have. But secondly, you're a doctor. Your job is to memorize parts of the body and this, that, and the other. It's not your job to understand firearms, to understand firearm parts and technology and regulation and law and how they all intersect. It's not your job. Therefore, I have a pretty good understanding of the fact that you don't know what the hell you're talking about, which is our biggest problem when it comes to having doctors advocate. To have a doctor tell me how to safely store my firearms when he or she doesn't probably even own a firearm, doesn't even know what is safe. Because they're told, and they'll tell you, well, you need to keep your firearms and your ammunition in two different places. So that if someone breaks into your house, you can't get access to one or the other, or you can't get access to both, and therefore you get robbed and killed. Oh, I wasn't supposed to say that, was I? Yeah, because that's what doctors, yeah. So when we say stay in your lane, doctors, that's what we mean. Stay in your lane. But the interesting thing about this is that it's clear that even though there are doctors who are clamoring very loudly that this should be the case, well, not all doctors are falling in line. In fact, there was a recent article that was out that points to the fact that a huge majority of the political action committees or the organizations that represent physicians, well, they don't give to anti-gun politicians. In fact, they largely tend to give to pro-Second Amendment politicians. In fact, here's a quote from the article here. It says, "We were surprised to find that there was a pattern across the largest PACs, that's political action committees, affiliated with physician professional organizations. They gave more money and to a greater number of congressional candidates who voted against background checks and were rated A by the NRA," says Hannah Decker, a medical student at Emory University's School of Medicine and the co-first author of the paper. That's right, folks. They basically did this study and they discovered that, well, hey, these folks are, physicians, they're not given money necessarily to, they're not necessarily given money to anti-gun doctors. Isn't that interesting? See, here's the thing. And understand this, the first role of doctors, quite frankly, is their job is to do what they can do to save lives. And so the first thing that they look at, what party is implementing policies that will help us be able to save lives. This is doctor speaking. And guess what? That those people generally tend to be people who, let me see, people who believe in the right to keep and bear arms. That's right. If you believe in the right to keep and bear arms, then you therefore must believe in importance of defending innocent life. That's their job. That's what doctors do. And if you're pro-Second Amendment, that's what you tend to believe, protecting innocent life, specifically your own, your family, your community. See, it's nice to see and it's nice to hear that not everybody is falling in line with this dribble that they keep trying to push forward. Folks, look, I've come to realize one thing, and I've been doing this now since 2013. And when I started doing it, I didn't realize how little I knew about firearms policy, firearms technology, and how they all intersected. I also didn't realize how few people actually knew that. I can honestly say that in the state of California, there's only a handful. There's only a handful of people who really, truly understand those things. And I can tell you this. There's only one that I can think of that actually works in the California state legislature. Only one. By the way, he doesn't work for an anti-gun Democrat. Doesn't work for an anti-gun member. Doesn't work for the governor. But there's one that I can think of that really understands it and gets it. And by the way, I don't even consider myself amongst those individuals. I'm still learning. Here I am 6 years later, and I still find that there's a lot that I'm still learning. But I know this. I know that I'm generations ahead of 99.9% of the people over there in that California legislature. That I do know. And I know that they, for some reason, the members, oh, by the way, none of them, absolutely positively none of them are members on either side of the aisle. Now, the good thing is that most of the members on the Republican side or on the pro-gun side will at least acknowledge that they still have a lot to learn and are open to listening and learning. Fortunately, folks on the other side, not so much. They really don't care to know the truth. They really don't care to hear the truth. In fact, they're really quick to ignore whenever someone gives them information that is not consistent with their ideology. And the same is true of these doctors. They're not interested in anything having to do with that. They're interested in the perception of doing something, not in actually doing something. That's what these doctors' organizations are pushing. And that's why I am so glad to know that the doctors who are actively involved and engaged in helping elect people, yeah, they're supporting people who support the Second Amendment, who support the right to keep and bear arms. Therefore, I say to those doctors, I will say, way to go. Anyway, folks, that's going to be it for today's Coffee with Craig. Thank you so much for tuning in. We very much appreciate when you guys like and share these videos, and we appreciate when you tell your friends about the Firearms Policy Coalition. We are the home in the fight for civil rights. Got to use them or you're going to lose them. You guys take care.
If you like our videos, follow, subscribe, like, and share.